We wanted to weigh in on a shocking situation that's been making headlines across the country. It concerns a 9-year-old girl's love for her goat at odds with a coordinated coalition of government entities promoting and defending the ideology of animal subjugation, even at significant costs. Nicholas Kristof wrote about the story in the New York Times, and Jan Dukowitz and Gabriel Rosenberg dive deep into the case for Vox. Highly recommend checking those stories out, as well as Rosenberg's book on the insidious history of the USDA's 4-H program. Here's what you need to know. The girl at the center of it all is a member of the 4-H club in Shasta County, California. She had been raising Cedar, a 7-month-old brown and white boar goat, for months as part of a 4-H livestock project, a project which traditionally concludes with the selling of the animal to be killed and consumed. However, the girl's time spent with Cedar led to a close bond forming between the two, which elicited strong and conflicting emotions about what should become of the animal she had come to love as a member of her family. Eventually, the girl had a change of heart, and with the assistance of her mother, Jessica Long, she removed Cedar from the county fair where he was to be auctioned to the highest bidder. Long offered to repay all fees owed to the fair related to Cedar's sale. However, in a stunning turn of events, Shasta County Sheriff's deputies, acting on behalf of the fair's organizers, drove over 500 miles to track down Cedar. The goat was ultimately seized from a property to which the deputies did not even have a warrant. Cedar was then purchased by Brian Daley. Not sure if I'm saying his name correctly. He is a California state senator, a Republican, representing the state's largely rural District 1. He has received more funding for his campaigns from agricultural interests than from any other sector. The goat was then subsequently slaughtered and apparently served up at a community barbecue. Truth at times is truly stranger and more villainous than fiction. The matter led to a federal civil rights lawsuit which named Shasta Sheriff's officials, Shasta County, and the Shasta District Fair, among others, as defendants who are accused of involvement in the matter. And the lawsuit claims a violation of the young girl's civil rights. We will be following that case very closely as it unfolds and keep you all up to speed on that. Now, the consequences of the fiasco have no doubt been devastating for the young girl, traumatized by the loss of her beloved goat. More broadly, the matter speaks to a campaign of youth indoctrination undertaken by an industry with massive political power, influence which it aggressively wields to stifle dissent and normalize violence and cruelty towards animals. A challenging bill of goods to try to sell to a public that vehemently opposes such things, at least in principle. Now, as social creatures, we humans are quite susceptible to influence by the dominant culture in which we exist, which can convince us that up is down, that authority is never to be questioned, and that mercy is weakness. But the underlying cognitive dissonance, pitting humans' natural internal moral compass against the norms all around us, can place a seemingly insurmountable status quo on quite a shaky foundation. Any cracks in that foundation must be quashed quickly and decisively. Quoting directly from the Vox story, this is why the child's defiance was so threatening to the fair, its agents, and by extension, the American agricultural system, and why it was met with the full force of the law. By suggesting that animals may deserve mercy and that the people who raised them might not want them to be killed, the family broke a social contract, a rupture that is apparent in Long's correspondence with county fair officials. Sending Cedar to slaughter was to teach our youth responsibility, quote unquote, and, quote, unfortunately out of my hands, said Shasta Fair Association CEO Melanie Silva. There was no opt-out clause, no room for individual conscience or moral judgment. It's reminiscent of an interview I actually saw on YouTube. It was of Larry Mazza. He's a former soldier and actually a hitman with the Colombo crime family in New York. He described how the mafia grooms young people into becoming trained killers. He describes his first assignment when he was just a young man was to simply slash an adversary's tire. Not such a big deal in the grand scheme of things. But then the following day, as he goes to read the newspaper, he finds out that that very adversary was gunned down on the street while repairing his tire. Suddenly, Mazza's small-scale act of vandalism has him complicit in murder. So began the gradual process by which a young foot soldier is steadily desensitized to brutal violence, and before long, it's Mazza himself pulling the trigger. The process of indoctrination relies on the context of a young person's environment, with those closest to him no doubt affirming his actions as virtuous demonstrations of loyalty and courage, obscuring the reality of the needless brutality happening right in plain sight.